helpful. There's one question here just on the screen about how do you not go overboard with too many things added to your pet's diets. And what I find is that if we get a few basic ducks in a row, the food, and at least initially, a probiotic like we've been talking about, and then some herbs temporarily to kind of get things going, you don't need a lot else. So I liken the practice of medicine to a game of darts in a pub where, if you're not very good at darts, you'll still rack up some points. You'll still hit the board, but you're not going to win the game. Whereas, but there's a tremendous amount of room on that dartboard, a tremendous amount of ways that you could rack up points, all of which will not win the game. But they'll be helpful, maybe. But there's a tiny little bullseye, and it can only accommodate relatively few darts. But if you hit that, game over. It's done. So I view my job as a practitioner as to find the dart that fits in the bullseye, or the darts. And this itchy dog we've been talking. So the first thing is real food diet. Start with that. See what happens. 2 or 3 weeks later, if there's no improvement, moving on. I now know it's an immune system problem. So I go ahead and if the fiber and carbs aren't in there, I put them in there. I put a probiotic in there. Kudos if you can do it all in one package like you guys are doing. And then the final thing is just the dart that in one bottle does everything that I think needs to happen. It stimulates local immunity. It tempers systemic immunity. It actively resolves skin inflammation and blah, 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 blah. And it happens to be herbal formulas that have been used as a cluster for easily 1,000 years. So very time tested. And that's all I do. Everything else, if the owners say, what about this? What about that? It's like, well, if it helped, keep going. If you never really saw it help, feel free to stop. But just make one change at a time so you can learn. When an animal gets better from prednisone, what have we learned? Nothing. We have learned nothing. But that is the point of being ill. Plato said the unexamined life is not worth living. I would say the unexamined case record is not worth treating. In other words, if you can't learn, if the owner can't learn about their animal and what makes them tick and how to prevent it in the future, then it's all just a wasted exercise, I think. So what I do is I don't find I can. All I learn from getting something better on hills is that, I guess I need to feed them hills. That's not education. That's marketing. But when you get something better on a real food diet, and then you start to dig in, why is this working? And why didn't it work? And when I added this bacteria, now it does work. What does that tell me? Now we're learning. And now you can, when you introduce these, when you get an animal better and you didn't use a sledgehammer, you just used whole foods, whole herbs, probiotics, something like Gussy's got, and they get better. Not only have you solved the problem, and not only did you, whatever it was that made you select those things, that rationale is true, but you also have treated your dog for the future. Like it's not as though the real food diet is just going to help the allergies. It's going to help everything. It's going to prevent cancer. It's going to prevent osteoarthritis. There's a zillion and one things that get better in the future because of what you're doing now. So when I'm teaching veterinarians to practice Chinese medicine, I tell them, you're not actually prescribing for what's going on today. You're prescribing for what happened in the past and what's going on in the future. If you can prescribe for what happened in the past, you will end up preventing the problems in the future. So there's this lack of temporalness to it. So I feel like it's kind of a muddied explanation, but we really do need to kind of understand that when you get things better using tiny amounts of thousands of compounds, then the only way that they got better is because you truly healed the animal. And if you know what healed your animal today, you know what is going to heal that animal for the rest of its life. If you get something better with prednisone, like, massive quantities of a corticosteroid and far, far higher levels than your system is designed to create itself, and it gets better, what does that tell you about the animal's future? Nothing, except that it might well get sick again, and you're going to have to go back to the vet and get some other bludgeoning instrument. So we need to look at medicine as an opportunity to learn and an opportunity to treat the future and not just to treat the present.